You know, when we think about the history of knowledge, our minds usually jump to brilliant ideas or epic historical events. But what if one of the biggest revolutions wasn't an idea at all, but the very material it was written on? We're going to dive into that, because believe me, this isn't just a story about ancient paper. The shift from one writing surface to another fundamentally changed how humanity's entire story was recorded.
For 3,000 years, one material was king. It was the foundation of empires, the carrier of laws, literature, you name it. But this ancient technology had a hidden, critical weakness, a fatal flaw, really, that was holding back the entire world of knowledge.
So, to really understand why a change was so desperately needed, we first have to get a handle on the wall that Papyrus had basically built around knowledge. Let's break down its biggest limitations.
First things first, let's give Papyrus its due. Starting around 3000 BCE, this stuff, made from reeds in the Nile River, was a technological marvel. It was lightweight, pretty portable, and way better than carving things into stone or clay tablets. I mean, it literally powered the great civilizations of Egypt, Greece, and Rome. But it was far from perfect.
The first major problem was geographical. See, the papyrus plant only grew in one specific place on the entire planet, the Nile Delta in Egypt. This gave Egypt a complete monopoly on the world's main writing material. So if they got upset with you and decided to cut off the supply, or if a war messed up the trade routes, the flow of information for the entire civilized world could just stop.
The second flaw was physical. Papyrus is basically a delicate plant fiber, and it absolutely hates moisture. Outside of the bone-dry climate of Egypt, it just rotted away. That's why almost all the ancient papyrus scrolls we have today were found in Egypt. Anywhere else, like in Rome or Athens, a scribe would have to painstakingly recopy a document every few decades just to keep it from turning into dust.
And finally, there were the, let's call them, user experience issues. Because of how it was made, you could really only write on one side. It was also too brittle to fold, so everything had to be a long, clumsy scroll. Can you imagine trying to find a specific legal precedent by unrolling a 30-foot-long scroll? It was a nightmare for research and a headache for storage.
So, a geographical monopoly, terrible durability, and a clunky format. These were the walls Papyrus had built around knowledge. But, as you know, necessity is the mother of invention, and a crisis was about to spark a brilliant new technology.
The story of this breakthrough is fantastic, and it comes to us from the Roman historian Pliny the Elder. And it's all about an intense rivalry between the two greatest libraries of the ancient world, the one in Alexandria, Egypt, and the other in Pergamon in what is now Turkey. They were in a bitter competition to be the absolute best. King Eumenes II of Pergamon was so ambitious that he was actually trying to poach Alexandria's head librarian. Well, in response, Egypt's king Ptolemy played his ultimate trump card. He cut off the papyrus supply. He basically said, "You can't build a great library if you have nothing to write on." This act of intellectual warfare forced Pergamon to either innovate or give up. Now, people had written on animal skins before, but what the people in Pergamon did was different. They perfected the process. And this wasn't leather. The key step isn't tanning, it's tension. The skin is dehaired, then stretched super tight on a frame while it dries. This crucial step realigns the skin's fibers, creating this thin, incredibly strong, and brilliantly smooth surface to write on. They had created parchment.
So now we have two competing technologies. How exactly did this new material solve the problems of the old one? Let's put them head to head and see.
Wow, the difference was just night and day. The source material, animal skin, was available pretty much anywhere, which immediately broke Egypt's monopoly. It was way more durable and could handle humidity. Its smooth surface meant you could write on both sides, which instantly doubled the amount of information you could store. And if you made a mistake, you could just scrape the ink off and reuse it. But the biggest, most important change is that last one, the form.
Parchment wasn't brittle like papyrus. It was strong and it was flexible. You could fold it. And that simple fact allowed for the single greatest innovation in information technology before the printing press, the invention of the book as we know it, or, as they called it, the codex. This shift from a long roll to a stack of folded, bound pages was so much more than a change in format. It was a complete revolution in how humans interacted with information. So let's explore the consequences, because they were huge. The codex was basically the ancient world's search engine. Instead of tediously unrolling a scroll, you could instantly flip to any page or passage.
This random access to information was a massive conceptual leap that completely transformed scholarship, law, and everything else. In fact, you can draw a straight line from this innovation to the table of contents, the indexed, and even the basic idea of a hyperlink.
And the impact on society was immense. So much of what we know about ancient Greece and Rome only survived because medieval monks copied it from decaying papyrus scrolls onto durable parchment books. Early Christians loved the efficient, searchable codex for the Bible, which was a key factor in how fast their faith spread. And since you could make parchment anywhere, centers of learning, like universities, could pop up all over Europe, breaking the old geographical limits on knowledge.
And it wasn't just practical. The quality of parchment itself opened up all new artistic possibilities. Its smooth, resilient surface was perfect for detailed illustrations and beautiful calligraphy. This is what led to the golden age of the illuminated manuscript, where books became not just carriers of information, but priceless works of art in their own right.
For over 1,500 years, parchment was the absolute bedrock of knowledge in the Western world. So why don't we still use it today? The answer, in a word, is cost. Making parchment is a ton of work, and it took an entire animal skin just to make a few pages. To put that in perspective, the modern equivalent cost for a single high-quality sheet of parchment is estimated to be between 50 and 120 euros. Imagine trying to build a library on that budget.
And so, history turned once again. It was a one-two punch of new technologies that finally did parchment in. First, cheaper paper, an invention that made its way from China. And second, of course, Johannes Gutenberg's printing press. The printing press needed a cheap, mass-producible material, and that material was paper, not parchment. But parchment never completely disappeared. Its legacy of durability and importance means it's still used today for documents that really need to convey a sense of permanence and tradition. You know, things like official laws, university diplomas, and sacred religious texts. They're still written on parchment, connecting us directly to this incredible ancient technology.
And that really brings us to our final thought. The invention of parchment wasn't just some technical upgrade, it was a lifeboat for knowledge. It carried the ideas of the classical world all the way through the Middle Ages and into the modern era. So, it's really worth asking, without this innovation born from a bitter rivalry between two ancient libraries, how much of our own history, our literature, and our philosophy would have simply rotted away and been lost forever?